I suppose you could also have exporter, depends what you think about there. There are a number of words in English that have these Latin or Greek prefixes where the prefix or the verb itself can be, or whatever it is that's following it, can be stressed. So we can say exporter like that, or exporter if we're thinking about contrasting it with an importer. Yep. Not many words, but some that have those prefixes where you can vary. When coffee is stressed, it's a beautiful, so we've got adjective, noun, noun, noun here. I think for me, I've not actually marked garden because it feels to me that like a kind of compound noun. I know technically it's not, but it feels like one. So rose has got a lot more stress on it than a rose garden rather than a rose garden. But I suppose it depends whether you're thinking about the formal rose garden, like at number 10 Downing Street or something, or just a...
I was saying that it's, when you say it out loud and kind of notice it, it's kind of quite difficult because I'm now so conscious of my throat, my mouth, my tongue, my lips and my nose.
Yes, this is the great gift of being a TESOL teacher.
Yeah, but when you say beautiful rose garden, I can kind of feel the air in my nose kind of
yes, you will.
Constricting when you go into garden after rose.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well spotted. Last one. Live as a verb, house, noun, bottom, noun, and lane, noun. So those are the things that stand out. These other words, these grammar words, like prepositions, articles, again preposition here, they weaken. So this is in the, this is at the, and this is of the. So we're not saying at the or of the, we're saying at the and of the. Got that kind of de-stressing going on.
I think there was a sort of thing over there about theirs in sentence B.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you say it, the more theirs comes out.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're probably not going to get quite time to talk about that this afternoon, but I'll postpone it until my session in a week or so's time, and we look at intonation in a bit more depth. But yeah, because of the fact that English allows the main stress in a bit of language to move about, we can break up what I've transcribed here as a sort of neutral way of saying something. We could take this one, for example, and you could stress that, yeah? What does it sound like if you stress it? What do people who thought it could be stressed say it as? There's a beautiful garden, yes. That will be stressed, as opposed to there's a beautiful, which is unstressed. Okay? And you can even stress these at times, as we'll see when I come to that session, but we normally wouldn't stress an article. That's not to say that you couldn't. You can. And it would be for a special purpose. So rather than saying there's a, you can say there's a beautiful garden. Now when I do that, okay, and stress it, I create a different interpretation in your minds, don't I? You're thinking now about a singular garden, because in essence, when I stress a function word, I turn it into a content word. It's not grammatically a content word, but phonologically it becomes one. You know, if you say, it's like when you're talking about people, you know, is whatever, is that, you know, the whoever. Oh no, it's only somebody or other. You know, is that the Mr. Smith? No, it's just Mr. Smith. Or you know, that is the Mr. Smith. When we do that, when we put that emphasis on it, what it means is the Mr. Smith, the one and only, you know, the one that we both know that we're talking about. That's what I say there through my use of intonation. You know, I was talking before about how much intonation can contain, and that's what that does. You know, it's the one and only. So we turn it into an effective adjective. It's not one, but that's the power that we invest in it through putting that heavy emphasis on it. And that's something we'll come back and consider. in that session in a week or so's time. Okay, last thing today, and then we'll close, is to think about this idea of rhythm and what a language's beat is like. There is a bit of a myth surrounding this whole idea of rhythm. But for us as language teachers, it's actually quite a convenient myth. The myth is to divide the world's languages up into two subdivisions. And one of those subdivisions are languages that, in fact, are quite rare. There aren't very many of these. They are so-called stress-timed languages, which means it's the number of stresses or stressed syllables in what you say that determines how long it takes you to say it. Okay, so stress, syllables and time are interlinked. English is like that. Okay, and that's what gives English its rhythm. But as I say, there aren't very many other languages like that. Russian does it in a similar but different way, as does, I think it's Brazilian Portuguese, or it might be Portuguese, but it's one of those. They're different from one another. One of them is stress timed and one of them is this next one, which is syllable timed. So what this means is it's not just the stress syllables, but all the syllables that determine how long it takes to say something. Now, generally speaking, most of our learners are going to come from syllable-timed languages, because syllable-timed languages are a lot more common than stress-timed ones. And what that means is that learners come from a different mother tongue rhythm or a different mother tongue beat. And in fact, it's considered one of the trickiest things, in fact, to get right in language learning. It can be one of the last things that learners actually achieve this, is to get the rhythm right. And there's a great deal of discussion and argument as to whether it matters if they get the rhythm, if they get the underlying rhythm right, which again we'll return to in a future session. But it does have an effect on how things are said. So to finish off, just to give you something to think about in the interim, and we'll be giving you some tasks as well in the meantime by email. But let's take a look at a sentence in English, which, as I say, is stress-timed. So this sentence is, it was a lovely day at the beach. Okay, in there we've got three stresses. So what are they? Yeah, lovely day and beach. Okay. Those carry the stress, first syllable of lovely, all of day and all of beach. Okay. All those other syllables are concertinaed into the gaps between the stressed ones. Sometimes why learners and people who are not English speakers say English speakers tend to swallow their words. It's not that they're swallowing them, it's just that they're running over quite a few syllables in a very fast way. So this first bit, it was a lovely day at the beach, those speakers, English speakers, don't think that they say it. All that's happening here is you've got a run of weak syllables before the first stressed one in a sentence. And when that happens, all these weak syllables get pushed together into a very small place. So although it looks on paper as this saying it was when we say it was like, all I'm saying is that's all those first three syllables amount to. Like that, it was love, because I'm getting to that first stressed syllable, which for English speakers is important to pick out all the stressed syllables. And indeed, I think I've probably mentioned it to you before, we don't in fact listen very much at all to unstressed syllables. We just listen to the stressed ones, because they're the ones that give us the information. If, however, you're a German speaker, then the equivalent in German for it was a lovely day at the beach is this. Es war ein schöner Tag am Strand. Okay? Now German, unlike English, is a syllable-timed language. In other words, the stress is more or less evenly spread out across the sentence as a whole. And with German, it's the total number of syllables that tells you how long it's going to take you to say something. Again, I think I've made this point before, that in English, because this has only got 3 syllables in it, it was a lovely day at the beach, that takes as long to say as to count to 3, is to say 1, 2, 3. It was a lovely day at the beach, 1, 2, 3. That second sentence has far fewer syllables, but it's exactly the same length, because all those syllables are stressed. Whereas you couldn't do that in German. You couldn't count to 4 in German at the same time as say, es war ein schöner Tag am Strand. You'd have to say, 1, 2, 3, 4. You'd only get halfway through before the two became separated. Okay, it would take twice as long to count to 4 twice as it would to say that sentence, I would think.
So when people sometimes, when it's unfair, but quite often you hear people saying of the German language, it's an ugly language.
Yeah.
It's because it lacks melody.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, yeah. It's not just that, but that is a factor in it. And you know, when English speakers are not used to listening to non-stress timed language, and that's why it sounds odd. You know, the beat sounds wrong. It's like listening to a piece of music where the beat is wrong, and you just can't quite work out why it's wrong. It's wrong. It often doesn't affect communication. It just doesn't sound quite right. Okay, so that's why you get German. I'll do a cod German accent. Okay, a learner's accent of this. That's why German learners say it was a lovely day at the beach, like that. You know, they spread out that rhythm, whereas we wouldn't. We'd have big peaks and troughs, you know, is how we say it, but Germans tend to say like that, because that, generally speaking, is how syllable time languages sound, da 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 da, like that, whereas stress time ones sound like that. And again, if you compare music from languages that have a syllable time background and languages that have stress time background, you can see those patterns repeated in music. Stress time music has a lot more peaks and troughs than syllable timed music. Okay, and then lastly, to send you on your way for the weekend, here's the Russian for it. Okay, Russian is in fact stress timed, though it's stress timed in a slightly different way from English, so it's not a grammatical content word shift, but nevertheless, Russian has lots of peaks and troughs as English does, and that's why Russian learners of English tend not to have much of a problem with English rhythm. They get it more or less straight away because it's actually quite similar to Russian, even though Russian in every other category is very different from English. In this one it's similar, whereas German, which is a much nearer language and a much more similar language to English, in this respect it's actually quite distant. So all these things can have a different kind of mix-up. So the Russian for "it was a lovely day at the beach" is "velocity na plyže." And that velocity na plyže, that it's a peak and trough, isn't it? It's not okay. You've got that same kind of attention being paid to nouns. That's the noun for day, and that's the noun for beach. So velocity na plyže, like that, is how Russian is, how Russian rhythm worked. But we'll pick up a bit more on that, not this Tuesday, when Zoe's going to be taking the session with you, but next Tuesday. So we've got a little bit more to do on this aspect, on rhythm, and a little bit more to, well, and then also I want to have a look at intonation. So I'll do that a week on Tuesday. Okay? Is that been enlightening in any way?